Okay, welcome everyone. This is the Zoning Board of Appeals meeting for June 8th, 2016. Bruce Gombos is not going to be with us this evening due to a conflict, and John Moss will be coming in off the train, and he will be joining us shortly. First order of business is to adopt the minutes of some prior meetings. The May 11th meeting we can't do because Bruce and John are not here, and we would need them to vote. April 13th, any corrections, changes?
No
I
corrections.
move to approve them. All in favor?
Aye.
Second, yep. So 13th, April 13th is good. January 13th, any corrections?
No corrections.
No correction.
I move that they be approved.
Second.
Second, and all unanimous. And did I miss one?
March 9th?
Yeah, I did miss one. March 9th.
Was I there?
No. Yes, you were there.
Oh,
I
wait.
know I-
Yes, you arrived late.
Oh, I arrived late.
Yes. But
So,
Joe.
I'm only voting on the second matter. I approve.
Yes, okay,
I was not there.
correct. You got there at 8:07. I would say you probably missed the discussion on the minutes. So I would appreciate your vote. All in favor? Okay.
I think I was there at 8:06.
8:06?
Correct.
Well, we've never been that accurate here at the village. Okay, the first item on our agenda is a public hearing on an application filed by Anthony Jandu for 7 variances to construct one second-floor addition above the existing dwelling and convert the existing one-car garage into living space on the property located at 62 Virginia Avenue. Just as background for those who don't often attend, 7 variances. Holy smokes. Well, what happens in Dobbs Ferry is that most houses were built before the zoning code was put into effect, and houses were not placed according to the zoning board. They were placed the way they were placed. And so a lot of what the zoning board does is we take the code and we take what variances are needed, and we look at them, not in terms of the number, but the significance of them, how large a variance it is, and really how it impacts the neighbors. And then we do balancing acts. And this applicant wishes to remodel his house. He came to us with some plans earlier because we had issues with parking. Virginia is a very crowded street in terms of cars parking, and so he and his wife have been, an architect, have been wrestling with what the proper solution is. And with that as an intro, would you please, for the record, identify yourself?
Yes.
You can take that out and carry that if that's easier.
My name is Peter Jones, I'm the architect for Anthony and Daesh And I do have some supplemental handout for you. The design has
Thanks.
changed a little bit, so just a little summary. The project is basically a 526 square foot extension to the second floor, and we started out with 7 variances, and we attempted to convert a one-car garage into living space, but that was a self-created problem that the zoning board was not, they hesitated to approve that variance. So we looked at alternate solutions, and one of those was to move that area so there's actually 8 variances. And we had to, create the notices again for the additional variance. So, if you look on the handout there, on the second sheet, you can see what the, I don't know if you want me to go through the 7 or 8 variances and just get to the current design.
Maybe very, very quickly so that the rest of the audience is aware.
So, the variances, the first was that the existing house is 2.9 feet from the front property line, where it's supposed to be 20. The second, the left side setback is 2.2 feet. And the combined side yard setback is 9.47 feet with the latest design. The existing lot width is 49.47, it's supposed to be 50. And the lot coverage is 29.3%, versus the 27% max. So the lot area is 3979 square feet, versus the minimum now is supposed to be 5,000. So, the actual lot is 79% of the, what is minimum with this zone. And then we're required 2 parking spots off street, and there's 1 in the garage that's there. And usually, as I said, we hope to have that waived, but we turned the garage to be in the garage and move that square footage upstairs. So there's one off-street parking spot. And then the 8th, in order to move the additional area to the 2nd floor, the existing house, you can see on the photographs there, the garage is a 1-story volume, and there's a 1-story volume to the back of the house. We originally planned to use the foundations of those to build onto, but we did probes before the first hearing, and we found that those foundations were not adequate to put more load on. So in order to build over, we had to push, make a new foundation, offset a new foundation beyond the existing first floor foundations. So in doing that, on the right side of the property, we had 10 feet on that side of it. We had to offset, so it was down to 7.25 feet on that side. So that was the 8 variance. And if you look, you can see on that, if you go to the 3rd page of the handout, you can see the elevations. We also met with, we had a recent submission meeting with HRB, and they wanted the design that we showed them and we showed you last. It increased the sky exposure plane on the left side, and they had seen in one of our earlier designs that we had a design scheme that was more compliant than that one was, and so they wanted us to hybridize that earlier design with the most recent design. And so what you're looking at there is
This is the most recent design.
this is the most recent
Okay.
design, and so the addition on the 2nd floor is offset 8 feet from the corner of the house, so that in the new addition, we are not building up against the left side property line. Can you see that? I guess you can see it on the plan. And we put a shed dormer on the back. We wanted to keep the roof pitch to be, the same pitch as what's existing there, so that it would appear, it would appear consistent with the time period and not look like a, raised ranch or something. So we lifted the roof and we put a shed dormer on the back at the minimum pitch that we put shingles on, and this is where we are.
Could you come up and just show me on the left-hand side approximately where you were before as opposed to where you are now?
In the last design?
Yes.
Okay, in the last design, might be better to show you. Well, basically, we stayed to the existing house, the outline of the existing house.
Yes.
We, in the side, let's see, we basically kept that roof line and came to, this is the same, but we kept that roof line, and so the ridge was back here but higher,
Okay.
and then we extended that over here, but what they wanted us to do at HRB was to, let's see where are we now? The addition, the second floor addition went from here to here.
Right.
They wanted us to shift that over.
To here,
Yes.
just to center it more.
Yes.
Okay.
So, and the clients are, they like this design, gives them, what we're trying to achieve for that. I hope.
And so with regard to parking, you're still providing one in the house, and you need a variance for one because you can't provide
That's correct.
another spot. Just a technical thing, when I drove by this morning, I was not thinking of parking in the driveway, but are you able to park in the driveway?
There's been a car that, I don't know about yours, but you can park one in there, but it's not, it's right away.
Right, I understand.
A car can be parked there.
Just for the audience, most of his the front of his house is on village property. He has a driveway that runs to the garage, but he does not own all of that land, so he is not providing parking for that second spot. But that's not unusual in Dobbs Ferry. Any questions? None for me. Move to close?
Want to see if anyone else wants to get her?
Anyone from the village that would like to speak? Okay, move to close?
Read the notices for the village for
Oh, yeah, you said you renoticed, did you get cards back on the renoticing? We will need those for the record. Yeah, if you give those to Mr. Cook.
Nineteen, 29.
29 were sent, how many returned?
19.
29 were sent and 19.
Okay, thank you. Move to close?
Second.
All in favor? I moved, Paul seconded, everyone else in
To
favor?
close, just to
Yep, to close.
Okay.
I move that the application be granted.
I'll second.
All in favor? Okay, good luck to you. No, and thanks for working with
And
the
we appreciate
Architectural Review
the,
Board and your patience
the changes you
in
made.
making this work for everybody.
Thank you.
The next item on our agenda is a public hearing filed by 2 Ashford Realty LLC to appeal the May 9th, 2016 decision of the Architectural and Historic Review Board pursuant to authority granted under Article 7, Chapter 300-23 of the Village Code for property located at 2 Ashford Avenue. Hoagie will speak on this application.
Yes, Richard Blancato, I'm the attorney for the applicant. This is an appeal from a denial by the AHRB of the existing property, which I'm sure you're aware of, at 2 Ashford Avenue. The applicant had received approval in 2012 for the building by the AHRB as well as the Planning Board and Board of Trustees. They received a building permit to construct the foundation and the walls for the first floor. But since they changed the construction from stick-built to modular, they had to get approval of the state code enforcement officer, which has jurisdiction over commercial modulars. Plans were submitted to the state as well as to the building department here for the modular construction. The state required some changes to be made. For example, since there are utilities on the roof, they required, a staircase to be built up to the roof with a door to go onto the roof, as opposed to a ladder with a hatchway. This was changed in the plans. Since there's access now to the roof, they required a safety wall around the roof, 48 inches. The parapet, which was originally approved, was 36 inches, so they asked us to increase the parapet to 48 inches to provide that safety wall around it, so it was 12 inches higher. They required a change to one of the exit doors, which is a minor change. There's a portion of the modular which Bradley can show you. Modulars come in boxes, and structurally you can't do with a modular what you can do with a stick built.
Mr. Blancato, could I ask you to carry around the mic, and that way people at home can hear better?
Specifically, these are the structural walls of the boxes. They sit on one each other, and these hold the boxes structurally. What the change was in one of the, where is it, over here, Bradley?
No, it's right.
Oh, okay, right here.
Red is the location of the mansard as it was approved by the AHRB in November of 2012. The black is where it was actually built, and the blue is where it would have to be shifted to in order to comply with the AHRB's current ruling to cut that portion of the roof back.
This is a difference of 5.9 feet, and the original wall was approved, you can see, would have no support for the roof all the way down. It's not a part of the structural walls. In addition, all of the utilities, wiring, and everything goes through the walls. So the plans that were submitted to the state and to the building department showed the mansard being moved over to here, and this is the area that was enclosed. Do you have the area from the top? This is the little section, 5.9 feet, that was enclosed because of the structural of modular. It has to sit on walls. So that's a change.
And that's on the east side, so there's less mansard on the east side.
It's on the side facing the parking lot.
It's actually on the south side.
South side.
Okay.
Once these changes were made, the building department determined that they were de minimis. There were some revisions in the windows, and we'll show you those. They're almost exactly as they were approved, but a few inches over in each window. And the building department issued a permit to go forward with the construction. The applicant then desired to change part of the exterior, the brick part of it. It's a small change, but the building department said, now you have to go back to the AHRB for that approval. We went back to the AHRB, and we ran into a complete different kind of review. They went back to the original approval, wanted to see all the changes, wanted us to make more changes, and it's not really within their purview because they were set back specifically for this one exterior change. They had no power or right to enforce their original approval. That's the building department's job.
I have a question about that part of your position. Are you asserting that they were without jurisdiction to disapprove of your plan?
They were without jurisdiction to look at anything other than the exterior changes that we requested. They could not go back and re-review the original approval and the changes made to the original approval, which I'm going to go through with you.
I'm bringing this up now because I'm a little concerned just from a procedural point of view.
The only department in the village that has a right to enforce approvals is the building department. And that goes for a zoning board approval. Somebody doesn't follow a variance, it's the building department that must do something. Same with planning board, and same with AHRB.
Well, this is something, and we may need a legal opinion on this, because it seems to me our power is to affirm or reverse as an appellate body. If your claim is that they were without jurisdiction, I don't know if that means we have jurisdiction.
Well, you can look at it de novo, the application.
Well, I mean, we have to look at it de novo, but if that's what you're asking us to do, that's what we sit here to do. But if you're seeking a ruling on overstepping jurisdiction, that seems like something you have to take to a court in an Article 78 and not to an appellate board.
If that's necessary, yes, but I don't think it's going to be necessary. Let me just go through some of the changes that were made so you can see how de minimis they are.
Before you do that, let me pick up on my colleague's point. It would be helpful for you to explain further as to exactly what you're glossing over. You're saying the brick exterior was what was submitted to them.
Oh, sure.
How did it get to them? What was the document by which it was submitted, and why? Was it at the applicant's request? Was it
It was the applicant's request,
Okay,
yes.
so
We asked to change some of the exterior, in part because the modular, the floors are separated a little differently because they have extra residence.
So if you could first focus on what did you originally submit to the
Let me
AHRB?
show-
Well, is that, that,
Again, take the mic, thank you.
yeah, my name is Bradley Olson from Gotham Design. Patty couldn't be here tonight. That actually, it might not really be relevant because we've actually removed that request. So what we had shown, the building as approved in 2012 had a stone base that was the entire first floor. And we were proposing to make a modification that was similar to the Walgreens across the street, where the stone base would only go up to the base of windows, and then the infill would be brick. But the reaction of the AHRB was not favorable to that, so we have now been focusing our efforts on trying to satisfy the AHRB. As we went to them, we went to 4 meetings. There was a back and forth and effectively a negotiation. They brought up 10 requests. 8 of those requests have already been changed, the drawings have already been changed to reflect those changes. They were minimal enough that there was no significant impacts and there was no problem making those changes. There are 2 other changes that they've requested, one of which, ironically, we've actually created a situation where the building was further from the approval granted in 2012. So we're not sure that we understand that request, and we're not sure, we disagree that that would be a preferable solution. The applicant is willing to do it. If that is the consensus that is now preferable, it is effectively a change to the previously granted approval. And that is the removal of this section of the mansard. That was something that was negotiated significantly back in 2012 as a means of bringing down the mass of the building, as opposed to having this corner read as a 3-story building with a flat roof. The preference was that it reads as 2 stories with the wrapping mansard to bring down the mass. So they did request that this section be removed, but it's contrary to, instead of actually making it more similar to the 2012 approval, it makes it significantly dissimilar to the 2012 approval. And also in response to significant concerns regarding the apparent bulk of the building, it also seems contrary to that. Removing this and creating the appearance of a 3-story structure on the corner as opposed to the 2-story with the roof atop it doesn't seem consistent with that desire either. So the applicant has agreed to do that if that is perceived to be a preferable solution. But we disagree. We think it's a mistake. We think that the solution originally approved by the AHRB is superior, and we would prefer to stick with that. So 9 out of the 10 we are prepared and willing to do.
Explain what
And the 10th is the roof change that Mr. Blancato was starting to show you.
Can you just step away from the board so I can see this?
So the 10th change, if we look at these drawings, so this is the Ashford Avenue elevation. The black elevation is the current proposal based on the as-built modular construction. The red is the original approval to show the differences. So you can see the very subtle change in height from the red to the black. But you can also note that from the cornice, the distance is the same. So the roof, while the finding of fact by the AHRB suggests that the roof is a larger mass and overpowers the building now, it's the exact same height as it was before. You can see the subtle differences in the windows, which is a result of the modular construction, the subtle differences in the heights within this. But once the shift was made to modular construction, it's necessitated the additional height for the structure, which also is noted in the finding of facts as being 2.5 foot difference. Well, that's accurate to the extent that it added 2.5 feet of structure, but not noted in their finding of fact is the fact that to counterbalance that, we reduced the ceiling heights in all the floors so that we would not, our intent was not to be higher than the original approval. The interior of the building would change, but the exterior mass would not. And we succeeded to the extent that the change, I think, has now been acknowledged as 4.5 inches. So we reduced the ceiling height from 15 feet to 13.10 by 4 inches in each of these floors. So the difference is not 2.5 feet. The whole difference is 4.5 inches. So this elevation is relatively similar. This elevation is also relatively similar. This is the section of mansard that is being debated, as you if you will, about whether that should be removed. But what you can see is, again, the red is as it was approved. So there would be a little bit more roof on this side, there'd be a little bit less roof on this side. The black is what's built because of the modular company. So it's a little bit bigger here, but the difference between the red and the black is what was identified as being I think a clumsy solution as opposed to, again, it's a very subtle distinction. But again, this can be removed if that's determined to be preferable. But again, our thinking is that given the concerns, keeping that makes much more sense. In fact, it's only built on the Ashford Avenue side from the modular company, so it doesn't exist. As you drive down Ashford Avenue now towards the intersection of Broadway and Wall Road, this section is not there. So the choice for the applicant is whether he's going to build this section or remove the section that faces Ashford Avenue. So, but our preference is visually that it would remain. Here, we see a slightly more This is the wall growth elevation. Again, subtle differences in heights and relationships due to the modular change, but you can see that the design intent is largely exact. It's hard to understand how the finding of facts by the AHRB refers to this as being now too dissimilar, whereas the other one wasn't. But the primary difference here is you can see the red line of this roof as it was approved versus the black line where it is built, again, to accommodate the modular construction.
And that gives a slightly larger
That
outdoor
gives a
patio?
slightly larger
Outdoor
appearance
deck?
to the mansard roof. The mansard roof is extended by approximately 3 feet in this direction. And then the final elevation, which is the one that faces the Chase Bank parking lot. Again, this is where you see the most significant change, where the red is what was approved and the black is what was built. The finding of facts made reference to a 5-foot change in the footprint. We looked at that briefly, but this is the 5'9" change. The red actually represents the reduction in the footprint as a result of that change. What happened is we had originally shown a 22-foot section of building that projects out 1'4". Because of the limitations of the modular can only be a maximum of 16'3", otherwise it can't be transported. So this had to shrink from 22 feet to 16'3", and the result of that is this element of the building got smaller. This got reduced on the first, second, and third floors, but on the fourth floor, it resulted in the mansard extending that additional 5 feet 9 inches. So that's the most significant change as a result of switching from stick-built to modular construction, and that's the most significant objection from the AHRB.
Well, I believe there was, as I read it, that there were a lot of concerns expressed by the ARHB, but it seemed to me that possibly the central one that I don't think you addressed has to do with, and I'll read what they said, that the effect of the change inverts the traditional relationship of a large, solid stone base and a light roof to the opposite, further adding to the appearance of undesirable bulk at precisely the wrong location, the roof. So could you address that particular finding?
Say that again, because I don't understand it.
Well, you've read the decision.
Yeah, I did, but,
I'll read it again.
please.
Compounded with the effects from the increase in the roof massing, the effect of this change, and this is under item 3 in their decision, the effect of this change inverts the traditional relationship of a large, solid stone base and a light roof to the opposite, further adding to the appearance of undesirable bulk at precisely the wrong location, the roof.
Let me just explain a couple of things. The measured elevation of the height of the roof is at elevation 260.7. The approved plan was 260. So it's only a few inches higher than what was approved.
It seems to me, and you can correct me or you can argue to the contrary, it seems to me that what they're talking about is not inches, it's perception. It's the appearance of greater bulk, whether you can, I don't think it's a measurement with a yardstick.
It hasn't changed except by inches.
Well, I mean,
But could you address the perception to what it looks like to people on the street, and I'd obviously be interested in what other people
I think
in the community think
I
about
think
that.
If we look at this slide again, we can see on the proposed plan, which is the black, the stone comes to here, and on the previous plan, it went to there. So that is what they're referring to when they say the massive stone base.
Is that about a block or a half a block?
It's probably a block, I think it's 1 foot 2 inches.
Okay, thank you.
So the 1 foot 2 inches has now meant that this base is no longer substantial, whereas the 1 foot 2 did. I disagree that the 1.2 has any bearing on that appearance at all. The roof, if the height of the mansard were increased, I would have to at least concede that I understood their concern. But look at the relationships. The red to the black, the red to the black. So the roof is a little bit higher now because of the needs of the construction. But the roof mass itself is exactly the same height as it was before. The stone base is a little bit smaller. So what we have is, we have 1 foot 2 less of stone, and therefore we're gonna have a little bit more of brick. That's the change in the relationship, and then the mansard sits atop it the same way it did before. So, I think that part of the problem is that it seems like it's more, because the numbers they're using, if they want to claim that it's 2.5 feet higher, it's been measured by the building department. So the building department has made a determination of what the height difference is, and that's what we're working with. We're not working with, they don't get to say, we've added 2.5 feet, but we're not gonna count the fact that you subtracted 2+ feet. What's the net change? The net change is 4.5 inches. So that's the number we have to deal with, and you can see it in the drawing. So if this roof, because it's a little bit higher than it used to be, is significantly more bulky or massive, I mean, I don't understand that myself, but they're entitled to their perception, whether that's, it's not borne out in fact, but they're entitled to that opinion. But that's what that is, an opinion, because they're talking about a perception as opposed to, I think, what the reality is. The other thing that I will show you, actually, because this, we haven't touched on it, but it is, you mentioned perception and how you're going to see this. There is a drawing which specifically addresses the parapet detail, which, there it is, okay. So, from the street, when you're looking up at the building, and you're looking at effectively at the coping, what you're gonna see here is very similar to what was approved. So as you look up at the building and you're looking at the underside of where the mansard projects from the building, here's what was approved, here's what was done by the modular company. So there's a very, very subtle difference there as well.
But I think, is it okay if I'm
Sure.
sorry I was late, but I've read everything that's been handed out. I think if you keep reading though, past where Jeremy was reading, you get to what I think is an interesting point to make here. If you read to number 4, building details, to paraphrase the planning board as well as the applicant during the 2012 approval process, quote, "The success of the 4th floor and its roof is all in the details." And I felt like the roof massing issue that was raised really had to do with the relationship of the line of the mansard to the line of the wall below, because that really is where there was a distinction in a comparison of the 2 drawings, where in the approved design, the line of the mansard was inward. It was inward of the walls, and now what's happened is it's been pushed outward. Not really in line with the walls below, but actually extending beyond the line of the walls below.
Well, the bottom of the mansard has the same relationship as it used to. I mean, the bottom, you know, as you're looking up underneath it, you're not going to see that it used to straddle the outside wall, and now it's all been pushed to the outside. So there's not going to be this like, oh, what happened there? Why is it such a big overhang? Well, that's because they tacked it onto the outside instead of building it in. So you're not going to see that. You're going to see the same relationship as you saw before.
Of the cornice to the wall.
Of the cornice.
Cornice to the wall.
You're correct. The roof was set back further, but this also, I mean, again, what's your perception? What are you going to see? This also sets back in by the time it gets to the top, to a certain extent. And with the way that it's been redetailed, the brick is going to be further out. I mean, it's going to be, for lack of a better attempt, if we, you can see as we go up, if I try and hit the wall there, you can see that the top of the mansard is set back in, as it would have been here, and yes, it is going here. So this is set back in further, but again, in terms of, I mean, we have the benefit of a full-scale model to look at and to see how, you know, I mean, obviously it's not detailed yet, you know, that was one of their concerns. But again, you know, since you weren't here at the beginning, 4 meetings with the Architecture Review Board, there were 10 issues that they raised. We've done 8 of them. We've agreed to do the 9th if that's what is necessary to get it done. And it's not even this issue, it's actually, the 10th was the issue of the extension of the mansard, not the change in detail of the mansard.
John, would you like a quick review of those changes?
I understand. Can you just remind me again what the 9th and the 10th was? One had to do with the third floor mansard, whether it stayed or got, or.
Oh, the third floor mansard. Yeah.
There's a third floor mansard issue, right, on the northeast corner?
Yeah, one which the one which we've agreed to do, if that's deemed preferable, is to remove this section of the, not the right slide, that's not on both of them. Yeah, here we go. We've agreed to remove this section of the mansard, which is on the corner of the building, as you're driving from Ashford towards the gateway. It's kind of the most prominent part of what you see.
Right.
And for some reason, GARP is actually, I think it was Mr. Sudak that was speaking, that suggested a lot of these other changes. Mr. Sudak is actually against this change, but this was a significant negotiating point in the 2012 approvals to help reduce the bulk of the building. So to have a 2-story building with a roof on it as opposed to having a full 3 stories at that corner. So as of right now, the mansard is built and supplied by a modular company on the Ashford Avenue side. It does not yet exist as you face the Chase Bank. So the choice for the applicant is either he's going to build this section of mansard to complete that per the 2012 approvals, or he's willing to remove this section if that's what's preferable. Okay. It seems contrary to everything that everyone is trying to achieve. So that's why we haven't just simply said we're doing it and taking it off. We think having it is a far better solution. And we think it would be a mistake to remove it, but we are willing to remove it if we have to. The other change is best seen here. Because of the dimensional changes of the modular, it affected the widths of certain components. You know, we're limited to what can be on the roads by the Department of Transportation.
Is this picture looking from Ashford?
This is actually the Walgrove elevation. The Ashford elevation is not really affected. This is the Ashford Avenue elevation. It would be affected by this change if that was determined to be appropriate, which we don't agree. The other change is around the corner. So you don't see it from Ashford. You don't see it as you drive down Ashford on the Chase Bank side. You see it from the Chase Bank parking lot, and you do see it from Wall Grove. So here's the Wall Grove elevation. The red is what was approved in 2012. The black is what was built. So that extended this section of the Mansour by about 3 feet.
And could you just point out on that drawing if the change recommended or demanded by the ARHB was made, can you point out where that, what would look different?
Well, actually, the more significant, I'll move to this elevation. Here is the most significant visual impact, where you'll see it the most. This is where it's built, because there's a structure there,
So, and we're looking now, that's the corner of,
This is looking
it's
from
it's
the-
Broadway and Walgrove?
Well, this is
the
actually
corner.
looking from the Chase Bank parking lot. You're in the parking lot behind behind the building. I mean, it's,
But it's the same, if you were driving down Broadway in that direction, this is what you would
If
see.
you're driving north on Broadway,
Yeah,
you wouldn't actually see this, you'd see the previous slide.
okay.
Which is, if you were driving north on Broadway, this is what you see right before you turn to continue going north or continue on Ashford.
You'd see it from Walgrove if you were driving
Mhm. Okay.
into the gate.
Yeah.
Okay,
If
so,
you're
so,
driving from Walgrove towards the gateway, you'll see, this is your side view, but you'll see this other
what, but,
elevation.
so if you were passing Stop and Shop,
If you're passing Stop and Shop on Broadway, this is what you'd be looking at straight ahead.
okay, and how would the change,
And that's this change. The mansard would extend, instead of to here, it extends to here.
I'm sorry, so just because of the lighting, it's a little hard
Yeah,
to see where your finger is.
And I can see the red and the black probably clearer than you can. This is the red line of what was approved in 2012. The black line here is what's built as a result of the module.
And that's about 5 feet.
In this case, it's about 3 feet.
About
When you turn the corner, that's the 5'9".
If you look at the plans, EC 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that's the plans.
That's true, yeah, you do have these. You can see it more clearly.
Go back to the parking lot.
Yeah. So this is your view, if you were in the Chase Bank parking lot, or if you were driving along Wall Grove towards the gateway, this is the building that you'd see, and here's the difference. The red is what was approved, the black is what existed because of the modular construction. We previously shown this as a 22-foot element, and because of the limitations of the modular construction, it was had to be reduced to 16'3". So the 5-foot projection reference in the finding of facts of the AHRB, which they refer to being a minimal increase on the first, second, and third floor, is actually that decrease on the first, second, and third floor of the 5'9" by that depth. But then when you get to the top floor, it necessitated the extension of the mansard, that same 5'9". And that's a result of the limitation that this width could not exceed 16'3" and be transported to the site.
It's on that framing.
So you did not see that. So this actually is the section of the building. The black is where it was built. Superimposed on that is the red where it was approved. The blue is where it would have to go back to in order to be cut back in some way that would be structurally feasible, although that's still up for debate because it would require state approval and approval of their engineers, and they've indicated that they'd be unwilling to do that. Because it's going to violate the structural integrity of the building, and they're worried about the hurricane forces and things. So this is where it would, it would have loading if it went back to here, but engineering-wise, the state doesn't seem like they're ready to approve that, and we can't do it without their approval.
Should we open up to questions now, or any more questions for the applicant?
That's why I have a couple more things to add.
well, I just had one, because there've been a lot of references to the state approval process. But am I right, you haven't presented us with any statements or comments by any state authorities about this?
We presented you with the plans approved by the state with the state seal on it.
But has anyone gone back to the state enforcement authorities after the ARHB made its
You're talking about the 5'9"?
well, in any of it, I mean, the parts that you're disputing or that you're asking us to overrule, have you gone to the state and asked them either if they would or wouldn't approve that specifically, or if there's some compromise that they would approve?
With respect to the 5'9", they will not approve it because it's structurally unsound, because to move it back to the line where it was approved, there's nothing under it. There's no structural foundation for it. That's why they all sit one on top of another each wall. So they will not approve that.
Do you have a statement by someone saying that? I mean, how do we know that?
Verbal conversations between Patty and the state. And our engineer also will not sign off on it, and the modular company will not sign, engineer will not sign off on it, because it's not structurally sound. The couple of things I want to add to it. As I mentioned previously, the findings indicate that the height of the building was increased by 2.5 feet. It's not true. It was increased by 4.5 inches. Insofar as the parapet concerned, I had indicated that the state wanted 12 inches added to the parapet so that it would be a safety fence around the building, because they require a fence now because of the door up there. My client went and he removed that 12 inches, so it doesn't exist anymore, and the parapet complies with the approval of 36 inches. So it's not an issue anymore.
Could you explain how we removed the 12 inches?
Cut it off.
How did he remove the 12 inches and still make it code compliant? You're doing
Well,
something
we
that
still
is
have
not
to
going to be
put- We still
visible.
have to put a fence up, but it's not going to be on top of the parapet.
You're going to be moving it inboard so that from the viewing angle you won't see it. Is that,
Yeah.
that's what I
Okay.
assumed?
Either
Is
an
that-
angle or whatever. But
You will see it from a distance if you're driving, if you're sitting at Clinton Avenue on
Mhm.
Broadway, you know, but from the street in the vicinity, it'll be set back.
Mhm.
So really what it comes down to is the mansard roof, the lower mansard roof, whether it's going to be taken off or left the way it was originally approved, or the 5'9", which was the increase on the 4th floor, because of the modular construction, that it couldn't be placed where it was originally approved as a stick built because there's no support under it. So those are really the two issues. The windows, if you look at the plans, it's easy to see on the plans, they're almost all exactly what was approved. And they were moved very few inches this way or that way because of the modular construction. And as the building department indicated, they were de minimis. They criticized us for not going back to the ARB. Once the state approved the plans and the building department approved the plans, we were not required to go back to the ARB. A building permit was issued. The building department determined that these changes are all so minor that they're de minimis. And there wasn't any need to go back until we asked for a change of the exterior.
I'd like to ask a few questions about that, but it may be misplaced. I don't know if it's the right time to ask it now or after we close the public portion. But so at some point, the applicant made a determination that you had to go back to the AHRB with respect to building finishes.
No.
Okay.
What happened
Explain how
was-
that played out.
We were getting a building permit, in fact, we did get a building permit to go ahead. And we requested of the building department that we exchange a portion of the exterior, which Bradley went through with you. And the building department said, now, because you're asking for that change of the exterior, it's significant enough for you to go back to the AHRB. And that's why
they wanted to increase the brick and reduce the stone.
Right, right.
It
So
was that
so
change that
it
forced
was
them,
that change that,
that proposed change.
that our building department made the
Yes,
determination based
right,
on
that
that.
was
we had to go
significant,
back to.
yes.
Okay.
Correctly so.
Yeah.
That's, you know, that was a significant enough change to definitely warrant it.
In the record before us, do we have that document of reference or anything from the building department as to what they were referring you to go to the AHRB on? And I don't see your initial application before us to the AHRB.
Because it's been effectively removed from the table, it wasn't well received, and we would read.
But you're saying to us that they don't have, that they didn't have jurisdiction to do what they did, but you're not presenting to us what the original application was or how it got to them.
They didn't, they
So
actually.
where is the jurisdictional underpinning for your claim? I don't get that. Where's your record?
We had asked the building department to make a change in the exterior. The building department referred us to ARB.
Where are the documents to show me that's what happened?
They actually never denied that application, it was removed. So it was not, you know, I mean, we can.
So we don't have before us the
Well, the
original,
building-
Actually, I don't know that, knowing Patty's thoroughness, all that.
and you don't have the document that,
I mean,
or whatever the transmittal was where the building department said go to them.
I don't know.
I don't think, yeah, do we?
It's a pretty thorough submission,
But-
but the building department has it, right?
But again, in terms of sequence, you came to the building department here, and you were asking for a change in the building permit because of the change in material? What caused you to
Yes.
come, okay, that
Yes.
happened,
That's
okay.
correct.
So you made a determination that, hey, we need to go back to the building department and ask permission in order to change the material.
We didn't make the determination, the building department.
But you came back, they didn't, I mean, the building department didn't read your mind. You, at some point, you were making changes and you said, hey, we need to go back to Dobbs Ferry Building Department in order to run
Oh,
this
yes,
by
the
them?
building department, yes.
Okay.
And they said, yes, you have to go to ARB.
But that didn't happen, but that, when you were creating the drawings, when you made the decision to go to modular, and when you created the drawings in order to accommodate that construction,
Correct.
and at that point, I mean, you were made, according to Gotham's outline, you made a number of changes to the design, number of changes to the drawings at that time.
Number of revisions.
Right, and you made the determination that these are not substantial enough, I don't need to bring it back
We didn't
to.
make the determination, the building department.
So, but when did the building department get those drawings? I mean,
They
that's,
got them at the same time as the state. And they
They got,
reviewed them.
they got the
with the
first
state.
set in 2013, and then it was resubmitted again in 2015. Because the building permit was issued in 2015 to do the foundation on the first floor.
mhm.
And then that sat for quite a while, as we all painfully recall, because we were waiting for the modulars to be approved by the state.
Okay.
And then once the drawings came back from the state, then the building department issued the building permit for the actual building, not just, you know, initially they issued a permit just for the foundation of the first floor, so that construction could commence.
I
And then they
think,
issued a permit for the whole building once the drawings were received from the state.
I'm having a little difficulty following part of your argument, which is, you seem to be suggesting that your letter referring to the change in the brick and the stone sets the agenda for the ARHB.
Well, that's what-
As, but, wait, could I just finish? But, I mean, the total picture is that you're presenting that in the context of a building where the plans have changed in multiple ways in addition to that. And so you're saying that you can tell them, we can only look at these particular items, but we can't look at the whole building?
If we didn't ask for the change in the exterior, we wouldn't have to go back to them at all.
But you did
We
it,
just continued
but once you're
construction.
before them, are you suggesting you can limit what they consider?
Yes,
And so you can also limit,
because we had plans approved by the state and sealed, we have plans approved by the building department and sealed, and a building permit issued.
but there's a disconnect between what you're saying and the findings of the ARHB, which are not that these were minor changes and subtle changes
We
and
say
de minimis changes. Their findings are that they were significant visual effects on the overall impact of the building, on that site. So.
Our position is that that's nonsense. They were very, very minor, little revisions, which we just went through. The height was 4.5 inches higher, the parapet was cut down, so it's not an issue. The only issue is that was raised by the AHRB, which we are up in the air about, is that second mansard and the 5'9", which we can't do.
But what I'm asking, both in terms of what you think the ARHB had a right to consider, and also what we have a right to consider as a de novo review board, is it your position we're limited to looking at what you referred to in the letter that brought you back before the ARHB, or can we look at the overall?
Well, let me put it this way.
Building.
That's our legal position. However, we feel strongly that if you look at the other things, that they're still favorable to us. The changes in the building are so minor, it's ridiculous. 4.5 inches on the roof. The mansard was approved, so that's not a change. The windows are almost exactly in the same place as it was. And the only one issue has to do with the 5'9", which we can't change. It's structurally impossible to change.
But I'm having a hard time with the mansard was approved, because I do acknowledge that on Gotham's letter, oh, geez, there's so many of them. Thank you. May 16th, this is memorandum to the ZBA, item J. As noted in C above, the method of framing the mansard roof changed from the approved stick-built building to the approved modular construction. This results in the mansard having more volume than it did originally. As noted, it projects out approximately 10 inches more than the November 26, 2012 approved design. Also, as noted, however, it still falls fully within the extent of the cornice. The total height of the mansard from the cornice to the top of the parapet is the same as approved in 2012. While it was discussed by the HRB, no change was required. But yet it's highlighted in the AHRB's finding of fact. I mean, there's arguably 2 paragraphs dedicated to it, right? So paragraph 4, for instance, unfortunately, the prefabricated system does not allow for the proper detailing of the key element of the delicate massing of the 4th floor, the most contentious element of the original approved process, and a floor permitted only at the discretion of the decision-making body. Instead, the new mansard is a faux application added to the outside of the prefabricated system components rather than step back from the body of the building as is traditionally done in New Empire mansard roof construction and further required by the building design standards. It's just, I'm bringing that up because I feel that there's this issue of there's only one thing that's outstanding. But from my reading, it's not. I think there's a number of things that are actually outstanding.
In order to correct that, we would have to take the modulars off.
The top one off, and you'd have to frame it by hand.
Not just the top one, all the modulars, because wherever there's a mansard roof, they're added on modular construction. And on stick built, it's done differently.
Mm-hmm.
Modular, you can't build it the same way.
So for me, and I don't know the answer to this, it is the question of who holds responsibility for the decision to go with modular construction. You all made a decision to go with modular construction.
Yes, right.
There are ramifications associated with it, and so the argument now is it can't be changed because the modular construction is.
All the modulars out and redoing stick. It can't be done. Which, forget it. The building will never get built.
Mm-hmm.
It'll just sit there. There's no way to do that.
And the question, in addition to, what can be done, what should be done, or what needs to be done. So there are some misrepresentation in the finding of fact, which are not factual. And once those are corrected, that reduces the perception of the amount of the impact. The 2.5-foot height increase is clearly, justifiably a cause for concern. But once you understand that it's 4.5 inches, that concern should be significantly reduced. You might still have it, but it should not be the same as for the 2.5-foot increase that they state, which is not factually accurate.
Mm-hmm.
They make reference to the 5-foot projection on the south side. which doesn't exist, it's a 5-foot reduction. You know, so once you proceed, you know, once you realize that, oh, wait a minute, that's not the way it really reads. You know, we went to 4 meetings. So their primary basis for the denial was, you know, too dissimilar to the rest of the neighborhood. So we suggest that looking at the drawings, have the changes somehow tipped it to being so dissimilar that it is no longer acceptable at all as a building? Compared to, you know, when we're just talking about these, you know, I mean, most of them are very minor, but we've been obviously discussing the most significant one because that's 5'9" is the most significant. So, you know, in terms of the zoning board, I know you guys, that's, you know, your job is to deal with the numbers. So here we have a building in a zone that permits 50 feet. It's no longer 45 feet, it's now 45 feet, 4.5 inches in a zone that permits 50. We have lot coverage, which hasn't changed, and in a zone that permits, I think, 80%, we're at, you know, 50%, is significantly less.
Well, I mean, for your sake and for everyone's sake, I would correct or take issue with what you said. When we do what the zoning board ordinarily does, which is determine whether to grant a variance or not, we're looking at numbers. We're looking at how many feet you're allowed and how many feet you're asking for and what's the difference. But in this context where we're hearing an appeal of a decision by the Architectural and Historical Review Board, they have we're standing in their shoes, and they have a different assignment, which is not to look at the measurements per se, to look at the overall architectural look, which has a lot to do with perceptions rather than the exact measurement. And your view is that their decision is wrong, and we should reverse it.
Well, their decision is based on some factual misinformation, which makes it more challenging.
But it seems that the heart of their decision is about visual impact and about a visual impact that makes a building go from looking, I guess the word is balanced or less heavy to looking top heavy, and giving a you know, just the impact that difference in look has on this particular significant intersection. So, and I mean, it's somewhat difficult to talk about this in terms of their findings are right or they're wrong. It's, are they supportable or not supportable?
Looking at the way the building looks, the difference here is 4.5 inches. The windows are slightly off a few inches around because of the modular construction. Otherwise, it's exactly the same. How is the massing or anything else changed? It hasn't. It's only on the one side with the 5'9" that the mansard is going over another 5'9", 5 feet 9 inches, because of the way the modular is constructed. It's framing and construction. That's really the only difference. I don't see how that is going to make a massive difference in the way the building looks.
That's an engineering question as to whether or not he can actually say that's the state is, but he's not really supporting that, right? He just keeps saying that we can't do. Requested that to the AHRB, asked it to be requested. We should ask about that, because I think what they're saying is, I think batch requesting means AHRB wants to bring it here, but they realize they can't bring it here because of the engineering, and then they'll go here.
This is the corner that we're discussing.
They're saying that the state engineer
So,
told
the
them,
sig- you know,
would give them
what is the
opinion one way or
significance
another on whether or
of
not
that
this was
moving back?
feasible.
That's
So
the
therefore, they're
5'9".
suggesting they can't even
This,
do
you
this.
can see the
which I
slight
think
bump out here
more comfortable zone
in,
concession.
you know, so this has the read of the projecting element. This projects out 1'4" from this plane. The 5 feet was removed because this used to be 22 feet and now it's 16.3. So the 5 feet was removed on these 3 floors, but that necessitated the modular extending the same 5'9" on the roof. So this is what we're looking at, is that difference there as the most significant change.
Can we reference SC3, the drawing SC3 that you've given us? Because I think there's a little bit of confusion on at least our part of us.
You have it in your file.
Sorry?
You have it in your
No, we haven't. Yeah, I have it right here. It might be good if you bring, there you go, right. So what you're noting in so if we're looking at the 3 different positions of this mansard at the top, right, the middle position is where the AHRB approved it in 2012.
Correct,
To the left is where it is today.
correct.
Who requested that it go to the one on the right?
Well, that's where it would have to go to.
Structurally would have to go. So actually, did anyone actually, it says as requested May 9th. Did anyone actually request that it go there? Or was it only that the AHRB wanted it pulled back and you, as the applicant, you said, well, it can't go back to where we approved it. If you want it to go back, it has to go all the way back to the structural point? Is that correct?
That's correct. And you have to remember that in the ceilings and the walls, and that unit was all wiring and sprinklers and everything else built in there, so it's,
But is there a
the
sug-
interior of the unit.
Was there a suggestion on your part, though, that that wasn't feasible to even bring it back to that point because there was some sort of an opinion that you would need from the state in order to sign off on that, and it had something to do
We
with,
absolutely need to get an approval from the state.
and is there certain
The
difficulties?
preliminary indications are that we will not get it.
But that's just a
The-
verbal.
The engineer that signed off on these drawings has indicated he will not sign off if the modulars are violated. Nor will the other engineer that have been retained by the applicant. So even if we could find an engineer that would be willing to do it, I'm not sure that we would get the approval from the state. So I don't think that's an option. We have, Patty's tried, he wants this built, he wants a solution.
Have you explored other structural solutions beyond what you described to bring it back there?
To be honest, I don't know what else
You'd
you
have
would
to
have.
put a wall all the way down to the basement through all the other units, which
Has that discussion occurred with the prefabrication company?
Well, it's the same issue, whether we cut back to here or here, they don't want to violate the box, because the box is designed for everything. So once you change the box, you've opened up a whole can of worms.
you gotta change the other box.
Right.
So
They have no,
whether we could restructure it to here in some way, put in some massive beam so that we didn't have to carry all the way down, and if we could figure out a way to do that, we still would get the approval from the state for it. So it doesn't really help us.
Any questions?
I'll just note, there was provided to me by the building department a document dated March 19th, 2016, in which it was the original request for the referral to the AHRB with regard to the installation of the stone and brick exterior. So, I don't know, John, if you got to see this. But I guess my question is, from a legal point of view, once you submitted it to them and went down this road of these other approvals, why haven't you agreed to their jurisdiction on these other issues?
Why haven't we agreed to
Yeah,
it?
by your,
We spent 4 meetings going over it with them.
so haven't you then
It's-
agreed that they
well,
can't review, that they can
We
review
didn't
these?
agree to it, they were asking us to show this, show that, and so forth. So we went through it all with them to show that their calculations in terms of height, in terms of a lot of different things were all wrong. And we went through each detail to show them that. And it got to the point where, after 4 meetings, the building is bank's doing an inspection on Thursday, and they're quite upset that it's stalled like this.
But,
So that we went through each and everything with the AHRB, and they wanted to keep going on, and we said, no, we needed approval or denial, and they voted to deny it.
I think this brings me back to the first question I asked an hour ago or so. I'm not sure what your view is of our jurisdiction. I mean, you've brought the notice of appeal, so you've invoked our jurisdiction. You're asking us to render a decision, but you're also saying the only thing that was ever proper for the lower, the board whose decision we're considering to look at was changes in brick and stone. And it's got to be one or the other. If you're asking us to, if you're saying there was no jurisdiction for that, I think that's something that has to be resolved before you come to us and ask us to basically, you're basically asking us to make what you claim was an improper exercise of jurisdiction by the ARHB.
Let me just say this. The state code enforcement officer has exclusive jurisdiction over commercial modulars. They tell us, and they work with the engineer from the modular company as well as with our engineer to go through the whole modular plan. They don't care about the architecture review board. Theirs has to do with the modular only, not the bottom of the building, just the modular. And they went through everything and they approved it, and they gave us their approval and it's stamped on the plans. And the building department reviewed it and gave it their approval. So now the ARB wants to change all that.
But it doesn't make sense to me that you're saying by deciding to use modular units, you took all jurisdiction away from the Village of Dobbs Ferry to approve this?
No. The building department still has jurisdiction. We have to comply with the building code, but insofar as the modular units are concerned, it's the state that approves them.
But we also have a provision for architectural approval. You're saying that goes away?
Which the state doesn't care about. As long
The
as
state
it
may not
doesn't
care
involve-
about that, but you're
as long
saying
as
that.
it doesn't involve the structure of the modulars.
Let me ask you, as a matter of law, does the state approval override that of a village or override that of a governing body or decision-making body such as the AHRB?
It overrides, they have exclusive jurisdiction of the commercial modular.
Structural review.
Structurally. They, insofar as the mansard, things like that, they couldn't care less, as long as it's structurally sound. However, when you get to the 5'9", oops, sorry, that is structural, and the state has exclusive jurisdiction.
If that were correct, that would mean if from the outset you had decided to build a modular building, you could have bypassed presenting an application to the ARHB.
No, I said they have jurisdiction over the facade of the building. The state doesn't want to get involved.
But I'm still confused by your position, because you're saying that they had jurisdiction over it, but then you can change your building approach and then they lose jurisdiction?
Let me try to explain it again, if I can. The state has exclusive jurisdiction over the structural components of the modular. They approve it. Insofar as the facade of the building, they're not going to get involved in that. The AHRB has control of that, except when it comes to structural components. And with respect to the 5'9" component, that's structural. Because to move it back to the 5'9", there's no support under it.
But insofar as there a conflict as a result of the two jurisdictions, I'm not sure if you're saying that. I'm not saying. I don't know if you're saying if one has priority over the other, if one overrides the other. If the AHRB does their work here, and the building department issues a building permit from Dobbs Ferry, and then it moves on, and the state comes up, makes a decision, a structural decision, that has a salient impact on the appearance of the building.
Well,
Richard, can I just, I think you're getting off on a good law review article. But that's not what we're here for. We're here for the very narrow issue. There's an appeal of an ARB decision. Their authority, now your authority de novo is under 317 C2, 3, and also 318. That's it. Forget about jurisdiction. There's jurisdiction. You're here. There's no appeal on jurisdiction here. There's no Article 78 filed. There's no stay. Look at the narrow issues that you need to look at. Is this excessively dissimilar to the surrounding neighborhood? Is this, under 318, cause it's inconsistent with the harmony of the neighborhood? Is it inconsistent with the Getty Station? Is it inconsistent with the Bell Building? Forget about jurisdiction. That's not before you. You have the narrow issue here to contend with.
I think that in part is what my colleagues were asking. What are you asking us to do? Are you asking us on that point? Because you raised in passing in the paper submitted to us this jurisdictional issue, so we're not sure what it is. Is it as council has laid out?
We're asking you to overrule the decision of the AHRB, your findings of fact, and indicate that the plan, which was the latest plan, which incorporates some of the things they wanted, May 10th, 2016, is approved. That's what we want. Now, it's absurd to me for them to say that the building, which they approved in 2012, which is almost exactly the same as built, is so dissimilar that it's going to cause harm to the neighborhood. It's the same building. The changes are just minor.
That's
Everybody good for a while? And
We
hear
can
Hear from the community? Okay, at this point, we'll hear from the community, and I guess I was...
Anybody else on behalf of the applicant?
Anybody else for the applicant?
No, not
No.
today.
Okay, and if you make your comments precise and to the issues at hand. You know, there are lots of issues here, but there are really only a couple. Okay. Come up, please give us your name and address and make your comment to the point, please.
Yes, possibility does for cemeteries. Okay, let me just say this here. We're talking about a building that was contentious to begin with, that was approved, everybody reviewed it, that was the time to negotiate. Okay, at that point, nobody knew it was going to be a modular building or not. That was the choice of the applicant. The whole problem here is because he made that choice. Okay? Now, I made that choice, and we can argue 4 inches, we can argue 5 feet, and we can argue subjectively that he thinks it doesn't deviate from the original plan. And I disagree with him. I would say, from my perspective, it does deviate. Okay, so we go back and forth here. The fact of the matter is that something was built that was not approved. Okay, and now we'll come back and negotiate after it's standing. We'll go back and forth and say, oh, it's just a little bit, not this, the line is here, this. It's just not the way we do business. And that's not the way we should do business here in Dobbs Ferry. We negotiate beforehand, we agree to it, we stick with it. And then if you make a mistake, I'm talking to everybody.
No, you should be addressing us, please.
Then it's the job of the applicant to make good on it. It's very simple. Okay? And now to say, oh, it's just stand there for the rest, nobody's going to touch it again in the state. It's irrelevant. We're in Dobbs Ferry, we dictate what we want. We're the ones that elected you to represent us. You negotiated this deal. Okay? And then the other thing is, all the government bodies should be working together. I don't understand why I hear from the applicant that the building department approved something and that the AHRB was not involved, and all of a sudden, there should be a procedure here. If something is built that does not correspond to what was approved, then it should go back to step number 1 and go through the various bodies here. And that's how it should be handled. But the fact of the matter is that something is put up after the fact, and then I hear all these excuses of why we can't do this, and structurally this and the state. I don't care about the state. The state should not have, tell us how our village should look. That gateway, the whole vision plan was predicated on good looking, we agree upon what the gateway should look like. And now we have this thing sitting there. Okay, so you really need to think about this.
Wrap it up, please.
Oh, okay, let me wrap it up. So I'm saying, please, have them clean up their mess. Stop negotiating with them. Negotiation's over. They made the mistake. Let them take care of it.
Thank you. Yeah, please.
To the actual slide. The presentation. Yeah. Well, it's not going to be as effective thanks to, by the way, I'm Steve Sudak, formerly of the ARB. But it'll work for the.
And could you give us your address, please?
Pardon me?
Could you give us your address?
23 Highland Avenue, Dobbs Ferry. So this is sideways and a little skewed, but I just want to show you that this is a letter that came to the ARB. We would like to increase the area of the walls that are brick, reducing the area that is stone. This would affect the south and east walls. Again, it gets a little lost in the effect here. I assure you it works well. Sometimes the north and the east are actually these two areas where they wanted to increase some of the brick and take away some of the stone. The first thing that was noticed was that in fact, these two facades are primarily stucco. So what was actually happening was there was a reduction of stone replaced with stucco. But this is the effect, the minor effect of changing those two minor things. I'm going to toggle between the approved drawings and the drawings that actually came. So if you go to any one part, just look here, okay, now that's, admittedly, that's the scale.
Could you do it a little slower and tell us which is which?
This is modified, whoops, this is approved. So approved, modified goes up. Look at just something like the length of this mass. Like I said, look at the proportion, center, and it is terribly distorted here. I have another slide I can show you in a moment that's more effective. The point is, if you toggle back and forth, look especially at this, which is the stucco area. See, it's been misconstrued that we call it a projecting area. The ARB called it a projecting area because this area does project outward towards you. But what it does is it constrains the edge of this plaque of stucco. So by cutting it back or changing it, see how it grows, the number of windows grow. And of course, the bulk and mass of that roof up above changes. You can see it shifting in this orientation downward. But this is the effect of changing two areas of stucco or brick to stone. And that was what the real problem was that it looked like clearly there was something more beyond that. And there was in fact something more beyond that. I'll go to this one real quick. Yeah, so this was the letter. And to the point that's been bandied around for the last hour and a half, the letter says one thing. You should, while I'm doing this, you should hold the letter in your hand. This is the letter that's like, says, look at this part of the drawing. This is what we want you to, this is what we want to change. It says that. But in fact, it contains, the drawings contain a massive amount of changes. So it's like, look here, don't look here, look here, and here, don't look here. And what happened was, as a result, primarily of the building going up, everybody looked here.
But hasn't this issue really been settled and agreed upon by both parties involved? I mean, why are we talking about this?
Not really, it's to show that what's been called a de minimis change of this volume right here, making it only 5 feet. It's a massive change to this entire facade. It's a massive impact because the area of stucco grows, the roof grows, and the roof is overblown and poorly proportioned and poorly detailed.
Your point though is that the applicant came to AHRB and they said, we'd like you to consider a specific change. It was a material change, right?
Yes.
And then, but under a more careful examination of the drawings, it was discovered that even though the applicant didn't come and say, look at all of these changes, there were many, many changes that were made. That's your bigger point, right?
Correct, and when you collectively put them all together, this was a quick thing I did, because we got asked, some of us, to come back that had been through the approval process before, obviously, to look at what we felt was different. And this was just something I quickly did on the dining room table, just to check. This is where I see the changes, not just the little stucco areas. Anyway, the last thing I just have to this is the last thing and that's it. I just have to put this to bed once and for all. And I'll do that here. Just because, okay? Flat roof, this is a comparative drawing that we were given. After all this talk about what hasn't changed, the applicant actually gave us a comparison drawing to compare what was different. The flat roof elevation 216.0 is now, in the new plan, 2.16.70. That's 0.70 feet, that's 8 5/8 inches, or 8 3/8 inches. This is a real architect's scale, this is the real drawing, the scale matches the scale of the drawing. It is really 4 feet and 6, call it 7 inches, to the top of this is the corner element of the building. I'm measuring from the new elevation that's already gone up. Corner element, approved elevation, 216 plus 4.5, top of corner element is 220.5. You subtract that from the elevation of 171, which is the base floor, 49.5 feet is the overall dimension. This was in there to stress the fact that, all that being said, at one time recently, the top was actually stayed the same. It finally has changed. But just to bring the point, this is the revised drawing. Okay? Was 216, is 216.7, same scale, same architect scale, 6 feet and 6 inches. This is where we come to these, this is where we came to the dimensions. You can take these back, you can study them, you can have them, I'll give you the architect scale, you can look at them, but I've done the math. 52.03 feet is the height of that actual piece doing the mathematics, which is incidentally higher than what it's supposed to be. 50 feet is what it's supposed to be. So 216.7 plus 4.5 elevation 220. Total height 50.20. As of this May 9, 2016 submission, the building is proposed to be 0.7. That's 8 3/8 inches taller than what was approved. That's what they're talking about. But the whole overall thing has gone up like 2.5 feet. We've done the math. 4 feet 6, measured from the new high point, new raise point, that's gone up already 8 inches. 6 feet 6 inches. I'm just comparing the two drawings. I mean, I looked at what the numbers written, I looked at what was scaled at.
Mr. Manley, you've given us a height figure. Can you reconcile your numbers to what Mr. Sudak is saying?
I didn't scale anything, I didn't use the revised drawing, I took the originally approved drawing from 2012 and took the height from the corner of the angled corner from the sidewalk and the approved height, and then went out there with a tape measure, went up on the roof, and dropped it down, and found it to be 4.5 inches higher than approved.
So that's your as measured actual.
As measured.
Thank you.
The parapets were higher than approved, they've been cut down to the approved height.
Okay.
I can send, I can.
No, we need it.
The PowerPoint?
Yeah,
Yes,
has to be part of the record.
yes.
Leave it on the table.
Make a copy, you can pick it up tomorrow.
To show computer?
The buildings,
Yes, I can move it on to that. Yes, my,
the whole thing, you have to leave it on the,
yeah.
Yeah, in the meantime, is there someone else who'd like to be heard? Mr. Whitehead? Awesome.
Good evening, Neil Whitehouse, 26 Hash Terrace. Just to look at this sort of globally, I'm always concerned about good process in government. I'm concerned about transparency. And when we look at what's happened here, we had, in 2012, there was an awful lot of work went into the approval of a stick-built building. And there was a lot of concentration on it because it was in the gateway. It was very tall. It was really looking for like a 3.5-story, went to a 4-story building. And it was eventually approved as that. At some point, Gotham or whomever decided to go from a stick-built building to a modular building. Well, assuming there is a proper level of architectural competence involved, then he would have known that in doing that, he would forego the ability to have the architectural detail that was so important as part of the original approval. When you ask who benefits and who loses from this situation, the loss is to the village in terms of that we would not get a building as good as the one that was approved originally. And the winner would be, I assume, the developer who found a less expensive way to produce a building by going modular. So the question that comes to me, and I think it deserves some consideration, is what was the motivation? Beyond financial, reasonable, everybody's motivated to make the most money they can. But at some level, I assume Mr. Steinschneider believed that he could make this happen. That once the building is there, what are you going to do? Make him take it down? Well, that has actually happened, as you well know, in many communities where people build buildings that are non-compliant. So what I would hope is that whatever the solution is, and I know yours is a very narrow jurisdiction, is that we don't find as a community that we are forced into accepting something that would not have been acceptable in 2012 under the approvals process that it went through because somebody believes that they can make it happen. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Please.
Mike Merrill, 32 Walnut Street. I was under this understanding that you had an engineer that works for you that stamped the plans.
Could you please address the board? We're not supposed to be addressing the applicant or the audience.
In any case, the engineer showed up for one of the hearings. Many of the other presentations, the AHRB had the benefit of seeing the blow-up of those comparisons to see how the buildings actually looked in context, both from the original approval and in the various new proposals. And it was a little clearer there what the differences were because it was superimposed. You could see, oh, this building looks like this and this building doesn't look like that. So it was a little clearer, that things had changed, but there are other basic things that, would ordinarily require separate approval, like a change in the windows, the window locations ordinarily don't get approved by the building department. If I had to, if I chose to put an extra 6-foot dormer on the roof of my home, I would have to go get a permit. So an extra 6 feet, which increases the space in the building, is a material change for the profitability to the builder, but it's also a material change in the building that should have been addressed as a change that shouldn't just be, oh, it was minor. Same thing with the rest of the architecture, which really the AHRB already discussed at length, and I hope that you consider that. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the village that would like to be heard? I'm sorry. Please, ma'am.
Nicole Sullivan, 204 Ashford Avenue. I'm not sure if this goes into what your jurisdiction here is, but it was raised by the applicant's attorney. That the building department had approved this and issued a permit, and my understanding from the permit that expired in 2015 was that it said no further extensions on this permit, and under the code, when permits originally issued, it only had 3.5 years to complete it, which is why I believe that last one said no further extensions. And yet there was a permit issued by the building department in 2016, despite extending that same permit that said no further extensions per code. So I think that's a problem. I get concerned with the process here, and then a lot of the changes that the applicant seems to think the building department can review are really design changes, and that is the purview of the Architectural Historical Review Board. So I'd just like to see some more process followed and procedures followed the way the code's written, so that every board gets to do what it's supposed to do and every department gets to do what it's supposed to do in accordance with the code. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Blackcott.
Yeah, very briefly. I just wanted to make certain facts clear. When the state signed off on the revised plan, the modular plan, and the building department looked at it and determined that there were no major changes, that they were de minimis, and issued their approval and issued a building permit, it was then that the modular boxes were ordered, constructed, delivered to the site, and installed. So that once they were installed, then we went and asked for the exterior changes. So that, it's not the applicant's fault that they didn't go back to the AHRB. They weren't required to. And they went and spent the money, got the modulars done, and, you know, with their approvals, and the changes really are de minimis, they're very minor.
Just
Please, please, please.
Just to address one of Mr. Sudak's comments, he was pointing out the increase in, you know, as he was flipping back and forth, of course, one of the biggest changes was the stone base, which we've removed from consideration, so that component of it is removed. He also pointed out the increase in the amount of stucco relative to the brick. You know, that was something that was discussed with the AHRB. That was one of the negotiating points, if you will. So we've added this section of brick to create, you know, this kind of composed area of stucco with the, you know, 2 windows, 1 window, 2 windows, and added this as brick to try and mitigate that change. So actually now we have more brick than the previous approval and less stucco, as opposed to the drawing that Mr. Sudak was using, which showed more stucco and less brick. So this is the part that projects out, but we've added brick to a section that would have been stucco, but in response to the concerns raised by Mr. Sudak and at ARB, we've added this section of brick to reduce the amount of stucco and to increase the amount of brick.
Very briefly, it's probably difficult for anyone now to imagine what actually is the approved drawing. So when we talk about bulk, we would concede to this, where the building continues to be built according to the last set of plans. So a lot of suggestions. This is a suggestion that was made, but nothing has changed out there. Also, just a point of matter, it's odd that the drawings that resemble what's built were drawn before the modular plans were prepared. So I think that's a matter of some concern. It should be a matter of some concern in your investigation. In other words, you get approval on a plan in 2012. We then produce another set of drawings which has a date. That goes to the modular company. And from that, presumably they build. There's something missing there. Also, I don't want to, Steve Tilley is more qualified to state this because he did say it in a very concise way, but I'll try and paraphrase it. The state has jurisdiction over the modules themselves, no doubt about that. If a wall needs to be a 2-hour wall separating a certain part of the building from another part, then the state ensures that when that modular box is built, the wall between them is 2 hours. But, to paraphrase Steve Tilley, the state has no jurisdiction over the composition of how you put the boxes together. If they did, then every building in the world would look like a modular set of boxes. It would look like a bunch of trailers put up on top of each other. I also want to emphasize, and I can show you a slide, but I'll trust your memory on this. When the modules first went up, the corner element was not wide enough. The box that made up that corner element was not wide enough. That, you know, deliberately, I mean, they fixed that, or they have, the modular company has a solution for that. They apply a filler piece that fills it out, and suddenly the entire facade is symmetrical. You have flexibility with modular construction. That central element did not have to be 1 box width wide. It was a certain width wide. Some of it was a box modular, and some of it was a bit of a filler. Same effect could have taken place here. Those kinds of things. Otherwise, every building in the world would look like a stack of modular boxes.
Correct. Thank you.
Before we go to anybody else,
I don't think so, no.
I'd like to hear from Brian, the building department, as to the history.
Okay.
Brian, could you address some of the comments that were made by the applicant in terms of the history of the approval process and what the changes are?
Okay, well, from the point when the initial building permit had been issued, it was to be a stick-built construction.
Watch the mic. Watch the mic, Brian.
The initial permit was granted when it was to be a stick-built building. The process of construction was changed to modular. As a result, it went to the New York State Department of State. Particular engineer there, Daryl Andriatis, was the person who did the review. Most of the review on the state's level came from exit doors that had to be changed, doors that didn't want to go to the outside, doors they didn't want to have inside the building going between common hallways and stores, things along that line. The state had difficulty with the material on the outside of the building. On the roof line, they wanted a brick to go up, excuse me, it was designed to have a brick on the top roof area, and it was determined that that brick would be too heavy for the modular construction, so it was altered to be a material that matched other portions of the building, which was a vertical paneling and only a brick on the front. As far as the 3.5 years, 3.5 years went and the permit had expired, and that was the end of the permit. The permit was reissued as a brand new permit as a result of talking with administration and with our village attorney about what we could do about having this building stalled where it was sitting. As far as it being approved by the building department before it was ever gone into modular construction, that's a falsehood. All of the boxes were created, all of the boxes were built, all of the boxes were virtually in transit at the time the New York State actually approved the plans. The plans were approved virtually the day before the modulars were set. They arrived at our office the day or two before the modulars were set. So it was not a question of a rather long review process. Secondarily, the plans were altered and changed by Mr. Steinschneider and or Mr. Nardescia and or the applicant without any notification or drawing saying that this is a change. Here's a notification, here's a cloud, here's a letter, here's an arrow, here's something in a color, here's something to say this is changing, this is moving. None of that was ever brought to the building department. A plan was given to us after it went to the New York State Department of State and said, okay, the state's approved this up to this point. And we get another plan, and they approved it up to the next point. But only when they finally approved it did the building permit actually get built. Got issued. And that's where it stayed. When the boxes arrived and they were put up, that's when the differences were noted. When asked about how the plans were not marked and why they were not changed, they said, he never does that. He doesn't change anything. You have to go a total review, page by page, inch by inch, everywhere on the plan, because he's decided, as a result of personal choice, necessity, construction, structure, changes.
Who's he?
He would have been the applicant's professional people, their designers. That would have been perhaps, could be through Gotham Design, it could be through Mr. Nardescia, it could be through another engineering company that worked out of White Plains.
Is it typical that it is your responsibility as the building inspector to do the sheet-by-sheet review and to find changes, or is it the responsibility of the applicant to come to you and say, hey, I've made changes and these are the changes that have been made?
It's supposed to be the applicant who shows that there are changes that are in progress. That was not done in this case. Multiple plans were brought forward. At no point was it ever clouded, colored, marked, arrowed, anything. The only time I got anything that was marked or clouded was from the New York State Department of State. Daryl Andriatis was very thorough on her review, and it was not for the appearance of the building. Again, it was for fire safety and structure.
Shall we talk among ourselves?
Do you want to close the hearing, or do you want to leave it open?
We may want to get some feedback
Okay,
to leave it open. I mean,
that's fine.
did it make sense?
That's fine by me, yes.
Let me kind of lead off, because, you know, we have a very messy situation. Okay, we are where we are. We didn't get here in a very clean way. We've had all kinds of different revisions. It's very hard to tell one revision to from another. We had the switch from stick-built to modular, which created differences, which some might consider large and some might consider de minimis. And both by equally intelligent and well-meaning people. But at the end of the day, we have a monstrosity that we've had with us for a long time. And I think we have to realize that we have to deal with it. And as acting as the Architecture Review Board, we have really only a couple of different tests. You know, typically the Architecture Review Board works with an applicant and they try to refine a project. I believe that that's not only beyond our capabilities, since we are not architects, except John does have a background in that. But really the issue is this exceedingly similar? Is it too similar or too dissimilar from the surrounding properties? And is it in harmony with the neighborhood? And to me, you know, I see changes. You know, I have to try to squint to see the differences, whether they're flashing back and forth or whatever. And maybe I'm just a little too pragmatic, but I don't see any changes that are under discussion that change the dissimilarity or the harmony with the neighborhood. And those are our charges in this case.
I don't want to put John on the spot, but it's true. Because as a non-architect, I am I'm close to being persuaded by the view taken by the ARHB that this was a difficult decision in the first place, and there was a lot of, just because of where it is and how it affects that central part of the village, it was very important to get it right. And I do see, you know, to my eye, a difference in just the sense of how big it is from what was originally approved. And the difference does seem significant enough to me to make it excessively dissimilar and to warrant affirming the decision. But I'm interested if architecturally, and we're, because we do have the advantage of a sort of scale model that we can look at, but we still don't have, I'm not looking at the finished product now, so yeah. I'm interested in someone who is better at visualizing how the final product's going to look. You know, your view of the validity of that finding about significantly more massive, especially at the roof.
So the reason I was going where I was going has to do before. it is this issue of process to me, right? The AHRB is a group of professionals that we actually extend rather significant power to. It's not, I mean, their ruling may come down to whether it's excessively similar or dissimilar, but if you look at 300-18B1, A through G, there's a long list of reference materials that they are charged with using, right? So it is a process. It is a long process sometimes. They go back and forth with an applicant, and there is a negotiation. They are debating details, and we as a village want them to do that because we want them to be the stewards of good design, very good design. So they have done that, right? It's been a long process with this building in particular, and from my perspective, if you read all the documents and you look at the history, they were sweating the details on this, and I thought, in my opinion, they were doing that rightfully, right? Especially with respect to a large building and a mansard, and the whole purpose of a mansard is try to be, just try to tuck in a little bit at the top. So, and then for me, it's a question of the process that led us to today. I mean, they forged a deal, they forged a decision, and they rendered a decision based on a design. And then some decisions were made after that. Decisions driven by money, by constructability, by schedule, what have you. And changes were made. Notification of those changes was not made to the building official. And now we're in this position of, I think, potentially setting this precedent of, well, you can go ahead and build it. And once you build it, it's okay. Once you've built it and it cannot be changed, or it's difficult to change it, then perhaps that's okay. That's a justification for deviating from the accepted design. So, from an architectural point of view, I do think many of the changes are substantial, and insofar as it moves the building from, I think, a well-designed building to a less well-designed building. Does it go so far as to make it excessively dissimilar or excessively similar? It's a subjective call. And now we're in this, and I'm trying to not make it subjective if I can, but I'm falling, it is a subjective call, and I would err on the side that it is, because it's the language given to us, excessively similar or excessively dissimilar.
But I'll tell you what I haven't heard from anyone. To what? It has to be a reference to something. You need to make your record, because you haven't made a record. To say to a court, there's an Article 78, that it appears bigger, or that it's some architectural changes, is not the standard. The judge will slap you down.
It's in reference.
It's excessively dissimilar to what? The building next door, the building across the street? Make that record if you want to make it. You gotta set forth facts.
Fair enough. Okay, fair enough. But can it reference itself?
Because what you have
Can it reference the design that was approved?
See, what you have here, I think you're missing, is that you have an approval done. Approval was done in 2012, which was found to be not excessively dissimilar by the ARB or anyone, no one challenged it. So you can't now say, okay, now there's a change, there's a new building proposed. Like you said, the ARB has a lot of power, and a lot of times it's give and take. You have a very narrow situation here with an engineering problem as to why they can't fix it the way they want it to be fixed. And the only option is basically take the fourth floor off. So I think you have a new application essentially. The building permit's been put on hold for that floor. You have a new application. Now you have to look at that new application, and the process has followed. That's why it's here. How is it excessively dissimilar to the Walgreens, to the Getty, assuming that's on the same street, the Mobile, assuming it's on the same street, the Chase building, the Bell building, and I think there's one other building there, I forget, which would be
the church.
The church. Well, the church isn't on the same road. You got to be on the same street under our code. It's very narrow. That's under 317C. Harmonious with the neighborhood is a different issue. That, I think you can go to the neighborhood, can be the church. I mean, you could say the Getty is disharmonious with the church. But you got to make facts. You can't, I'm just telling you, you have to be able to set whatever they are.
I understand.
I appreciate where you're going.
Who has the obligation, though, to present that? Because the only thing we've seen tonight is comparisons to right? Various different drawings that none of us can keep track of. There hasn't been a
Well-
single slide presented to us tonight to show similarities or dissimilarities to any other
No,
building.
it's a good question. The ARB didn't do it, which I think is an issue. But you're looking at de novo, so I know you know the neighborhood. You know, you can compare the neighborhood, you can ask more questions about it. I think I did see a photo of some of the other buildings in the area. I think you guys have one. Maybe that's something you want to see.
Can we go through that? I mean, for somebody
I think
that's,
you should.
if that is the issue and the record needs to support it one way or the other, I don't understand what leg
you
we
gotta-
have to
you gotta
stand
look at
on
it.
when we haven't seen a comparison to anything.
But I think a court will look at what was already approved and look at the differences. And I think the main difference, and what I'm hearing, and you know, we can correct the record if it's necessary, is the way the mansard is built, that it's 5 feet 9 inches on the south side further out because of the structural point, and it's 2 or 3 feet on the, I guess that's the Walbro side.
Well,
Let me just follow up.
If there's
Oh, yeah,
more,
go ahead.
anything else?
Well, those are the
No,
two, I
those are-
think,
those
issues.
are the
So,
issues.
John, I ask you a question, just focusing on those 2 points, which are the 2 issues remaining. Does that make it excessively dissimilar to the neighborhood, those 2 changes?
No, this is one of those things where the language is so broad and so vague. I don't think I can, this might be one of those things where it's just a problem with the code, in my opinion. But no, is it excessively dissimilar from the rest of them? There is no building like that in the neighborhood, right? Is it excessively similar?
Well,
No,
let me articulate what I think are the concerns that should be looked at, and it is true, this wasn't part of your presentation. I mean, the concerns about harmonious and dissimilar, in my mind, focus on the apartment building at the corner of Cedar and Broadway, the Walgreens, I'm not sure what it's called, there's a brick building across the street from Walgreens. And to me, what they all have in common is that they look like they're in the business district of a small town or village. They don't jump out at you as being too big for where they are, and and it seems that the issue is to be in harmony with that. A building should similarly, I mean, we don't want excessively similar either, so this isn't a model of any of those buildings, and it shouldn't be. But does the mass of it and the appearance of the mass to the passerby make it enough different that it's undesirable?
Wasn't that true of the approved plan? I mean,
It's really a subtle question. I think the approved plan sort of pushed it to where it could go, you know, it was, and this, I think, was the view of the ARHB, is that was the outer limit of what you could do with that spot and still be harmonious with the neighborhood. And I am concerned that the building that's before us now definitely has differences from that, and I think our decision is, are they significant enough to warrant a disapproval?
It raises the point about what is excessively similar or dissimilar. What are we talking about, right? If I look at architectural style, right, that's one way of assessing this building. But you can also look at it as at design quality, right? And this is where it becomes, this is the trickiness of looking at a building that is of a traditional style, right? So there are well-designed traditional buildings and there are poorly designed traditional buildings, right? And it is an issue of proportion. It really is, and it does come down to nuance, and it does come down to whether or not that mansard is tucked in
inside the line of the walls below, or whether it comes all the way out and sits on top of, in line with the outside of the cornice. There is a long history of that, and it's exactly why the code goes back and it says, look at all these field manuals, look at all of these different references, because they document good design versus poor design. And traditional language is used poorly all over the place. Right. It's not hard to find it, right? And so here we've appointed a group of professionals, right? They have to be in the design profession, and I think that at least 2 of them have to be licensed architects, right? So these are, and we're charging them with knowing something about architecture, knowing something about design, and being the stewards of saying, bad traditional design's not gonna hold water. We want high quality traditional design if we're gonna go in the, as opposed to a modern design or what have you. So, again, it's this question of what is excessively similar or dissimilar, right? If I look at the church, and real quick, and just in terms of context, real quick, right? So if I look at the church across the street, it's a very, very well-designed building, probably because it was designed 100 years ago, right? But those are the buildings we look to for as models, because they had it right, or we're copying them, right? And I think the building, the professional building up the street, the former Masonic Temple, it's actually a beautiful design. It's a designed building. It's a well-designed building because it uses traditional elements in an appropriate way.
John, I guess I agree with everything that you say, that the Architecture Review Board and we have to be looking for the best design that we can get. And now apparently, according to the AHRB, what we have here is not there.
It was, but yes, it's not there now.
But does that, a step down, you know, whether it's a 1% step down or a 10% or a 20% step down, does that make it excessively dissimilar? I guess that's to me what I just don't see.
It's a good question.
Well, I mean, does the applicant want to address that issue?
If I may subject John to a couple more
Yeah.
questions. John, just before the applicant is heard, the cut on the 4th floor that the AHRB was looking for, do you think, just having reviewed the plans, that there's a structural solution there that should be explored? And then with regard to the mansard on the east elevation, that was their 9th point. And I know the applicant had referenced Mr. Sudak's desire that, and I would be interested in hearing from him on that point. But if you could address those, John, and then open it back up to the applicant.
You're asking about my opinion about these. Restate the first one.
So as I understand it, there's a, on the 4th floor, there was a cut that they wanted moving
south facade, right?
Yeah.
This issue here.
Right. So
and they're indicating that, at least the applicant so far has indicated that structurally that's not possible without wholesale changes, which I think our record's short of any proof of that. But just from your look at the plans, can you tell?
Yeah. See, this is gonna bring this is gonna highlight my point about subjectivity, right? I don't find the reduction of that one volume on the south side of the building from 20-some feet to 18 feet or what have you to be horribly objectionable, right? That's not for me. If I was sitting on the HRB, that wouldn't be what I was focusing on. What I would focus on, if you looked at the 2 versions of A310, the one that was approved and the one that was denied, therein, and I think this is what Mr. Sudak was trying to do by toggling back and forth between these 2. When you look at it holistically, and that's how you have to look at a building, is holistically, I think you start to see a different building. So on that particular point, Paul, I don't think that's so major. I think I can understand completely where the AHRB is coming from with respect to that portion of the mansard roof on the 3rd floor and how it turns the corner. It's a little awkward, right? So
But hasn't the applicant said he'll get rid of that?
Yeah, I think, yeah, right, so that's,
That was approved by the AHRB in 2020.
right, I know, yeah, I understand. Well, that's my point though, right, that's my point. So if, if I were in that position, I'd say, take it out. Deference to Mr. Sudak, but, for me, the bigger issue is how the building reads in terms of its massing with a larger mansard because of the way that the modular construction dictates how it gets built, because it pops it out more, it makes it look heavier, in my opinion. Anyways, I don't know, Peter, about, does it become significantly excessively dissimilar or not dissimilar? If I'm voting, then I'm saying it's excessively dissimilar in terms of a level of quality relative to the buildings that surround it. So, and I'm happy to keep talking, and you can talk me out of it.
Would that be the standard, is the standard the level of quality, or is the standard the?
I don't know.
I believe it's the appearance.
So I don't know. I don't know if it's.
It might be a hard
right.
case to make with the gas stations.
Fair enough. Fair enough. But if that's our standard, if that's our standard, we are in bad shape.
If actually, if just since we raised the question about an element that you, in your application, said Mr. Sudak spoke to, I would like to hear from him on this point before returning it to you, if he could just address, and Steve, if you could come up.
I'll be really brief. I think the remark about that the village attorney made with regard to, the gas station and the Getty station, this is your standard. I think it is incredibly disingenuous to yourselves and to all the other boards who spent something like 9 years reviewing this to suggest that we said at the outset, well, we've got to make this building compatible with the gas station and the Getty station. And,
Steve, that's not the question that before you. Let's not do that. No,
really.
I disagree.
No one is trying to make
Okay,
that.
let's get to the point that I asked you to, which was addressing the applicant's comment about how you wanted to deal with the mansard on the south.
With the one at the adjacent to the bank.
Yes.
I just felt that was a discussion of, that was an element of a lot of discussion in all of the design work and all the preliminary work to try and minimize the effect of this corner, to try and see the way this breaks down. And it breaks down in this direction. Part of the way it does that is to have this here. To increase this, it's kind of funny, it hasn't been built on this side yet, so it's no cost to not build it again. This one's not been built yet. This, as we've heard, is just an applique, but it's important that it remain there because of the stepping down of this facade. In fact, it's as important as all the decision that went into this terrace at the top. It's equally important. That's why I was advocating for it. I thought I was helping the situation with the ARB by saying, no, don't let this one go. Don't let that go. That's important to keep that. One final thing, it is just rather incredible when you look at it that, talk about the modular boxes again. This has to be a box width. Well, it could have been 2 box widths. Then the terrace would have gone 2 iterations back. It would have been less stucco, but amazingly, the change to stucco resulted in a taller building, more space at the top, a decrease of stone at the bottom, an increase of stucco on the side. I mean, that's rather extraordinary that everything happened to work for the advantage of the applicant and against all of the stuff that we worked for 6, 7 years to try and control.
And can you address that, basically the same thoughts that you're saying now, but put it in the context of how that relates to being similar or dissimilar or disharmonious with other structures in that vicinity?
It was the consensus of many boards in this village and the subject of many, actually, village board resolutions and so forth throughout all the boards, that the building that finally was arrived at in 2012 was tolerable. It was the best that could be done for the 100% corner. And the fact that it has deviated in this many ways from what was approved, and the fact that it's just really what all this has been about is it's sort of excuses as to why. The fact is it did change. And going forward also, just two other things. The time that has spent for this building to be built is long. This process right here is kind of long. The building will stand 50, 100 years, and we will look at it for 50, 100 years. This is a blip on the radar screen, this process right here. This is a blip, but it sets a precedent, as you mentioned before, for what's to come. And really, it ought to be scrutinized that way.
Before you step away, can you explain, maybe this is more of a question for Mr. Cook or Darius or whomever, but again, in the HRB finding of fact, item number 4.
All due respect, I shouldn't really comment. I can't comment as an ARB chair.
Fair enough. Okay, fair enough.
I'm familiar with it.
Then I'm going to put the question out and ask for maybe the appropriate person to ask, because I just don't understand. I want to know the detail of this statement. It says, so unfortunately, the prefabricated system does not allow for the proper detailing of the key element of the delicate massing of the 4th floor, and this is what I'm getting at, the most contentious element of the original approval process, and a floor permitted only at the discretion of the decision-making body. My question is, was it the AHRB or the planning board that allowed a 4th floor based on some condition?
Board of Trustees.
The trustees permitted an additional floor. Okay.
And the planning board. Planning board recommended, Board of Trustees approved.
Thank you.
I don't think there was any specific design of it as an ARB issue.
Yeah, I mean, but the sentence I didn't read, to paraphrase the planning board, as well as the applicant during the 2012 approval process, quote, "The success of the 4th floor and roof is all in the details." So they approved it for whatever reason, and it appears that the planning board at least acknowledged that handling a 4th floor is delicate business.
I don't remember what the exact quote was, 4 or 5 years ago. But this has been going on, I think originally in like 2004, where there was an issue about the 4th floor.
Mm-hmm.
It was a vote by the Board of Trustees. It was a 3-3 vote for against, well, it ended up being against the 4th floor for an in that day, 12 years ago.
Mm.
So this has been an issue, whether there be a 4th floor at all, going back at least a dozen years.
Okay, that's good context. Thank you.
So the 4th floor is important, no doubt.
Yeah, I know.
But I think you still have to make your record in reference to the buildings that under the code, and harmonious in the neighborhood, what your facts are.
I appreciate you pushing us there, because, we've been in trouble in the past.
I don't know if you have any other questions, but I'd like to pick up on that theme to the applicant, which is in terms of the record that's before us. Hearing, that's why I think some of us asked, what is your application? You gave us a lot of history here, but I'm not sure how it addresses the determination that was made by the AHRB, and how can you address that issue? Is there additional information that you'd like an opportunity to submit to us, or do you want to how do you want to proceed? And also with respect to your position that from an engineering point of view, you can't make further modifications that were requested by the AHRB. Is there any additional information that you want an opportunity to submit to us?
All right. First, I just want to address the excessive similarity and excessive dissimilarity. Years ago, there were a number of cases relating to architectural review boards as to whether they were constitutional or not. Because the courts said that some of them are just board personal preferences and they violate people's constitutional rights. It was then determined that they are constitutional, provided that there are certain guidelines. And the excessively similar and excessively dissimilar is in all the code ordinances of all the municipalities that have an ARB. That's the language which has been adopted by the courts. And to give you an example of how it works, if you have a street with all white houses and somebody comes and wants to put a purple house, that's excessively dissimilar. If you're talking about this particular case where the ARB or AHRB has determined that the building as approved is not excessively dissimilar to the other buildings in the area and is in harmonious, in harmony with the area. Now the question is, does that 5'9" extension of the mansard roof make this building excessively dissimilar? To me, it can't. Because that's really what you have to look at. It has to be a drastic change. When you're talking about excessively dissimilar, excessively similar, we're not talking about a minor change. We're talking about something that's really like excessive and substantial change, and it didn't happen in this case. Now, insofar as structurally, you know, we can have submissions from the engineer, the state, and so forth for you. Our problem is you meet once a month, and that means the building is going to sit there for another month, exposed to the weather. We have it wrapped. This is the second time we've had it wrapped. We can't finish the outside, and you know, we really need something to happen. We don't want to go to court because we know court's going to take us 4 months. If we have to, we will, but we don't want to. We would like to get the building going and finished. And I don't think that this 5'9" mansard is going to make a big difference. When you look at the building, it doesn't make it more massive. It just reduces the size of the open deck that was there.
Well, I think we need a way to proceed, and I think I, for one, would like to see, I'd like to carry this over to the next time, to give us some time to think about what we're doing. But I'd also like to see, the issue is the approved plans and the denied plans. And what I'd like to see is side-by-sides of each view of the building. So that.
That's what we did.
No. I want front, I want east side and east side. I want west side and west side. No, I want one view side by side.
We gave you side by side and we gave you an overlay. We did both.
You see this?
That's the overlay.
Right. You can't. All you can do is this is like going to putting on 3D glasses. Okay, that does not give you a feel for what a building looks like.
We gave you the plans which show approved, proposed, side by side. That's there, isn't that there, Brad?
I'm just looking at this. We have this SC1. This is the 2012. This was, I guess, this was a work in progress as it was going through the ARB, series of meetings. Here's the approved in 2012. Here's what was submitted to the state, and I believe what the building permit was issued on. This was requested by the ARB with the lower mansard being removed and some of the other changes. This was proposed by the applicant, and then this addressed some of the changes requested.
So which is the final plan?
So final is the one that's May 10th, 2016, which
The rendering, so the first rendering is on the bottom left. What number is that?
This is SC1.
SC1 bottom left is the approved plan. So where does it look like now from that same view? Or proposed?
You know, this, excuse me, this is what we got.
Right.
Yes,
It's in there.
And, yeah, the fact that it's in here, you know, is like,
Well, that's.
it's like trying to find a grain of
Let me-
sand.
let me just
If
make
you'd
two-
like, if you'd like to make this clear for us, you might help us a little bit.
Picking up on just,
If we- if
can,
we
can,
look-
what- before you do that, just what I'd like to see picking up what has just been said is, what is it that you're saying you want to build, you know, with all of the recommendations by the AHRB compared to what was originally proposed? Do you have a shot of that side by side?
That's the May 10th version. This is,
Yeah, this is the latest one that we wanted approved. The only difference is we want the mansard here, right?
no, that's, Mansard is here and here.
Yeah, okay.
So, of the 10 requests made by the AHRB, 8 of them are already incorporated into this.
Yeah, I think what the chairman is asking is, do you have a view that compares that to what was originally approved back in 2012?
Yeah, that, it is 2 separate sheets.
Right.
What sheet is that, you have it on now?
This is A 3.10, proposed by applicant 510, and there's also A 3.10, which is the elevation sheet, which is as approved, AHRB approved November 12th, 2012.
So the top left of
So this is the Ashford Avenue elevation.
A310
Yeah.
is the approved plan, and the top left of a previous one.
Okay. Different elevations from the approved plan.
So there's, that's the.
And that's the one that we
If, you know, if the applicant is confused as to what they're showing us, I mean, it's really difficult for us to deal with this in any
Well, if you look
confident
at the
way.
plans, this is what we're proposing, 5, 10, 16, and the other one.
You know,
he showed you is-
I met with some architects at the club today, and what they did was they showed side by side, and it makes it very easy to deal with the differences. You know, there were some conversations earlier, you know, about plans changing and changes not being drawn to the attention of the building inspector. And I think we've got an issue here that we need to be very clear about what we're evaluating and what we're deciding on. And I, for one, think side-by-sides would enable you to make the strongest case you could to this board. And I would also like to see pictures of the surrounding buildings, because that is our standard that we're going to be measured by in terms of the neighborhood.
We have the.
And again, not now, because it's very late, we've got 2 more applications to deal
It's in
with.
your package, right? Yeah, it's in- We can show you the side-by-side of each elevation, approved and what we're proposing. We can show you the pictures, more pictures of the neighborhood. We can get,
You want a rendering, not just the height, a render, yeah, side by side.
yeah,
The building
Yeah.
elevations, the rendering.
Right, how they look.
Yeah.
yeah.
Right.
So it's taking these elevations, reorganizing it so that you can say, this versus.
The real appearance of the building, because that's what we're making decisions based on.
And we can
Is
bring
that,
in some
is-
engineering that indicate the structural.
I think what we need is an application that's focused on the question before us of excessive dissimilarity. Rather than, and focus on that so we can make a determination on that and addressing the points that were raised in terms of comparison between the prior approval and approval now. If you could address that as to what are we measuring excessive dissimilarity against?
And any recent case law on point would also, I think, be helpful to kind of judge for making the judgment. I mean, to the extent that there's something that's on point.
Well, I could provide it.
okay, and the applicant as well?
He could
you know,
provide it to
right.
me and I'll provide it to the board.
That would be great.
I would like to have one more copy. Say something. Floor was closed.
15 seconds.
Say 2 things. A, We talked about that all this similarity is subjective, okay? We gave the responsibility to the AHRB. They're the experts, okay? Now, you guys are not the experts, but now you're gonna make a judgment if they're right or wrong. I think that's absolutely incorrect. You either support them or you don't support them, number one. Number two, I just wanna ask this question now. Is the fact that the applicant did not follow the original permits, that's off the table. That's fine, right? So all we're talking about, the only decision you guys are gonna make is about similarity, it doesn't make sense. There's two issues.
They're a board of limited jurisdiction. The issue about the top floor being built is a stop work orders under. So it's not an issue for this board, it's an issue for the village.
Okay, so there's separate then, okay, fine. I just wanna make sure that
Each board has, there's a law in the state of New York, they require certain boards to have certain.
And that's why we're trying to contain the conversation.
Gotcha, but please don't undermine the AHRB. They're the experts, go with them, or don't have confidence and go against them.
Or perhaps make sure that there is support for whatever their decision was,
Yes.
as we sit and make that determination. So, if the applicant could provide that, just before we adjourn for the day, the question the applicant raised of whether we want to have a special meeting sooner than our next meeting, or do we just want to go to the next month? I think there was a request made to do something at a special meeting, which we do have the power to do, or do it sooner, or...
We will get you the information.
Would like it on the 4th of July?
Is that a public meeting or a closed meeting?
Public hearing.
No, it would still be a public meeting.
Okay.
My concern with that is not doing on a regularly scheduled meeting.
Yeah.
From the public's point of view, it becomes an issue.
You know, and getting materials is going to be, I'd lean to the regular schedule.
I think it's a bad time of year to have a special meeting.
Yeah, yeah. So, move to adjourn? All in favor?
Don't we have other applications?
Oh, just the public hearing. So now I have to find the agenda.
I think these are yours. I think that was what you came in with.
I bled into your...
That's all right. That was late, it's my fault.
No.
He's got it. I uncovered it. Next, we've got a public hearing, and I apologize for the delay here. On an application filed by Sharon McCann Doyle for one variance as per table B1 OF District Dimensional Standards of Village Code of Dobbs Ferry. The proposed first floor addition in the OF4 zone requires a 10-foot minimum side yard setback, 6 feet proposed, and this is for 60 Belden Avenue.
A 3-ring binder next time. And an index. This yours? I think that one was yours, Joe.
My name's Larry Frazen, I'm Frazen Architect, and we've been working with Sharon and Stephen on the addition to their house at 60 Belden. Their house is on 2 lots. It's a small house.
Yeah, why don't you carry the mic when you go to the pictures?
Well, the house sits towards the east of the lot. Currently, with the side yard setback with the sliding scale, there's a 10-foot setback. There's currently a small side entrance on the house.
which is an outdoor steps and a covered porch. We are proposing removing that and replacing it with a small mudroom and powder room, with the steps off the back and covered porch off the back. The reason for going out this way is just to keep the side entrance, not obstruct the living room and dining room, and the garage is in the back, so this is the main point of entry to the house. Currently has these funky stairs here, which are just dangerous and kind of a nuisance. So for that, for the proposed addition, we would, to make it minimum usable, we would need to extend 4 feet into the side yard setback. So we're requesting a variance of the 4 feet.
And you were already 2.5 or 3 feet into the side yard with the side entrance that you're removing?
Yeah, the side entrance.
So it gets worse by about 1.5 feet. Is that how I remember it?
Yes. I can't even read it there myself. Right, it's currently 7'4.5". The side.
Right, and you're proposing to go to 6.
Right.
Actually, could you show the satellite view of that again, and just to show us on that where the
Okay, so you might be able to see it. This is the current side entrance.
Mm-hmm.
So we'd be extending it back towards the back of the house and having it put in.
And has this been discussed with the neighbor, the house to the right, or to my right?
Yes, so that house is currently, as you can see, a little bit close to our house.
Yes.
Would you like me to pop?
Please.
That's 10 feet, but this is an existing house, there's a lot of addition.
Yeah, so as you can see, it's currently quite close as it is, and they're undergoing construction right now. Our neighbor, Jimmy Jones, we've talked to him, and he actually had offered to come down tonight, and I said, don't worry, we can follow up with you, but yes, it's been discussed.
He seems to be well within a 10-foot setback as well, but that's an
Yes.
existing condition?
I believe that, based on the roof, I think it's probably been like that since the original construction.
Okay.
Surprisingly.
That's what I noticed when I was there.
And they were in front of us 3 years ago or something like that, because he did something on the house and he did the big garage in the back.
Right.
Right, they've been under construction for a while.
Yeah, yes, they have. And you've got no windows on that side, so it's a bit of a buffer.
We don't have any windows in submitted design, although the owner would like to add a single window on that side.
It's one window that doesn't align with any of their windows.
How big a window?
Standard size?
Standard size.
Would there be a mansard?
The state inspector says it's good, I'm fine.
Yeah, New York State requires that anything within 5 feet of a property line has to be no windows and has to be completely fire-rated construction.
Okay, we'd be within
6
feet.
And you're just gonna make it.
It would be enough for some light, but not obviously for view.
Now, that would have to go to the Architectural Review Board, would it not?
Yes.
So that they could capture that,
Absolutely.
the window issue.
Yes, it's an exterior feature.
At that point.
Right. And we're hoping to do the AHRB following up, whatever decision.
Is there anyone else who'd like to be heard on this application?
I have a question.
Move to close?
Second.
Jeremy seconded it, and everyone agreed. I move that the application be granted in accordance with the plans that were submitted.
I second.
Good luck.
It's okay. It's all right.
I hope it was worth the wait.
I'm gonna get
Again, I
points of
apologize.
money.
I know,
for the
I know.
result of it.
Okay, and the last is the public hearing on an application filed by Doug Williams for 20 variances to subdivide the 2 lots and construct one new two-family dwelling and remodel the existing one-family dwelling located at 74 Maple Street. And this is just a reminder, this is an application that was before us some months ago. And rather than have us deal with the siting of the second house, we sent this to the planning board. And I can't remember the number of variances that they were initially before us for, but I think the number has probably increased, and that increase has to do with fitting in the legal setback as opposed to the setback that would be in keeping in harmony with the rest of the structures on DeVoe. And with that as a preamble, I will let the applicant take over. And was this renoticed, or is this just a continuation?
No, it was renoticed, and the official count here is that there were 42 sent and 32 returned,
Okay, thank you.
and 1 letter.
What did you say? I'm sorry.
42 cents.
42 were sent, 32 responses, and 1 letter returned.
Good evening, my name is Steve Seacon, I'm an architect working on 74 Maple Street subdivision. And as you recounted back in the fall, we were before you, and at your suggestion, we went to the planning board to seek their input. And as a result, we're back here tonight with a favorable referral from them. And tonight, we're looking for the approval of 20 variances for the proposed 2-lot subdivision of 74 Maple. As for the recommendation of the planning board, we're proposing to subdivide the property into 2 lots in order to provide 2 separate residences for a total of 3 families. The existing residence along Maple Avenue will be for the single family, and the proposed house at DeVoe would be for the two-family. And the sensibility of the planning board was that the fabric of the neighborhood, and you'll see this in upcoming slides, lent itself actually to more smaller lots and one larger 3-family residence. We prepared an overall lot comparison map which provides an analysis of all existing lots within the neighborhood between Maple Street and DeVoe, and a chart that illustrates the degree of nonconformity that's in the neighborhood. So I just wanted to get to that now. So the this is what you have in your packet. And what the lot in the comparison table is trying to demonstrate is that all of the blue cells in the chart illustrate something that's non-conforming. So when you look at it and you see a lot of blue, what it means is basically each lot has a fairly high degree of non-conformity.
Excuse me, can you please move to the right of the board or the left, either one?
Is this better?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, the camera's up there. And it's a nice jacket, but it's not that nice.
So, interestingly, of the 21 properties analyzed, 15 of the properties do not meet the minimum lot size requirement of 5,000 square feet. And the blue boxes in the chart also illustrate that 10 of the properties are actually smaller than 2 lots that were being actually proposed. In addition, none of the properties meet the front yard setback requirements. 20 of the properties do not meet side yard setback requirements. 17 of the properties do not meet the lot depth requirements. 11 of the properties do not meet the lot width requirements. 13 properties exceed the maximum building coverage requirement of maximum of 27%. Also of importance, all of the properties that were just analyzed require at least 3 variances. So I guess what we're saying is that that block is highly non-conforming. And I think the point of the planning board, as well as the sentiment of my client and myself, is that the fabric of the neighborhood, even though it's more highly non-conforming, makes more sense to have 2 structures, 2 lots, than one long structure, which we analyzed back in last summer, which resulted in a 84-foot long the 3-family scenario would be 84 feet long and jig and jag, because part of what we're dealing with is also an existing non-conforming house that sits on the property line. So
Now, have you resolved the fact that that's not on your neighbor's property?
we have must we have them?
It was actually never on the adjacent property. The siding sticks over, and we did address it, and we would pull the siding back, but we can't do that without a building permit.
Okay, but I just wanted you to feel comfortable with where you were.
Yeah,
Okay.
we did, and the surveyor came and he redid the survey and he put some kind of notation on it, so. Yeah,
Okay,
we did.
Also, in our analysis of the neighborhood and the properties there, we looked at the percentage of 1, 2, and 3 family houses. And the blue on the pie chart is single-family homes, which accounts for 52% of those 21 that we analyzed. 26% are 2-family, and the remaining 22% are 3-family. So I think what we're proposing is something that actually fits in better than the 3-family scenario. Along those lines of fitting in context, the planning board also wanted to see street facade elevations. So we stitched together pictures from both Maple Street and DeVoe Street and overlaid the proposed residence and the additions on the photographs. And as you can see, really everything fits, fairly neatly, into the fabric of you know, the streetscape, the massing, the character of the houses, and, you know, is not, doesn't look like, you know, a three-family sort of, you know, larger, you know, building. So what we're suggesting is both in terms of fit and scale and context. We think that even though it's, like you were suggesting when you opened your remarks, that sometimes the number of the variances is almost a little misleading. But there's a number of variances that are related to this, that our lot is 49.9 feet. So we're an eighth of an inch off. It's on 2 lots. So it magnifies. Yeah.
Right.
So with that in mind, we're hoping that you'll buy our reason and that you know, take into account planning board's advice, and I'd like to hear your comment there.
Do you have any particular?
How many variances are being required or being requested as a result of the modifications being made to the existing house?
Lot 1 is the existing house, so that requires 9 variances. The number are partly required because they are right next to the property line. So it results in things in both sky exposure plane as well as setbacks, both front, side, and then by the addition of a property line in the middle, we hurt, in a sense, the depth for both lots.
But it seems like most of them, though, are actually existing.
Yes.
Existing violations, and then you've worked out a deal with the planning board that sets up even more, but is supported by them, right?
In effect.
Yeah.
And the real one that's self-created is when you divide the lots. That creates further, yeah. But that's.
Yep.
One other thing I just might add is that, you know, parking in that area is very tough and hard to come by.
Agreed.
Right. So one additional thing that we are doing is taking more street parking onto our lots, as well as the 2 driveways that should help lead the congestion.
Yeah, no, you know, my initial issue was that you could legally park cars on DeVoe in front of the house, which seemed totally out of character. And so we sent you there to find a better way.
Is there anybody else that wants to be heard?
Would you like to be heard? If you'd give us your name and address.
Gary Reed, 72 Maple.
Yes.
As you ended, the issue there is parking. The 74 Maple Street is listed as a 1-family, and right now it has a basement entrance, which might have been like a 1.5-family. The previous owners used the back lot to park their extra car on it, that they couldn't even park in front of their own house. So adding a 2-family on the DeVoe, how many parking spaces is the builder allowing to get into their driveway? That we're just not going to compound the problem on Maple and DeVoe Street as far as parking.
Can I address it?
Sure.
Yeah.
So, right now, you're on this side?
Yes.
Okay, so right now, like you're saying, they used to park up here, like with spare cars?
Yeah, they had a van and their children parked cars there as well.
So what the plan is, by code, you have to have 2 parking spaces per residence. So we're going to have 6, which is more than is there now. And so basically the plan is that the basement under the new house will take 4. So that's, 2 times 2, because it's a 2-family. And this guy is basically going to park, in the side, like they do now, with just 2 cars.
Because they can't fit 2 cars there now in the driveway. In that driveway only holds 1 car.
This is going to come back this is going to come back 40 feet. So there'll be room for 2 cars.
That's fair.
Sure, thank you.
Just to be clear on that point, you're not requesting any variances based on that plan, you're not requesting any parking variances, right?
No, these are parking variances.
Parking variance on the secondary lot.
On the secondary.
Because of its proximity to the first lot.
Right, but not, that's the.
But it's providing the spaces.
Right, but.
Find the physical spaces, but you're actually encroaching onto another lot in order to
In
make
order
that
to-
curve to get
yes.
into that garage. Which at the moment, he owns both,
Correct.
at the moment.
So, there will probably be need for some.
So you'll do an easement when as and if the property is sold? Okay. Move to close?
Second.
All in favor? Unanimous? Move to grant the application per the plans submitted. All in favor? Seconded by Paul and everyone else in favor.
Thank you for your help.
And I now move to close the hearing. All in favor?
Could we discuss that?
Second? Yes.